Okay, we're back. So I went ahead and figured out what was wrong, and the problem was in my cat codes. So I was getting an error. Let's see if I can scroll back up to it. So as you can see here, um, the first error message was it was finding some nans, not a number. And so when I scroll up, it looked like here it was trying to extract an average, and there were no waveforms that met that criteria. And then I look up here, it was loading participant 201, and it was yielding no records. And so I got to thinking, what might cause that? And I realized that when I specified the cat codes, I put in this extra specification of the group number. And after reflection, that is where the mistake is. Because every cat code needs to be represented for each participant. In other words, you can't have a cat code that one participant has but another does not. And so when it tried to find this, where group equals 1, participant 201 was not in that group. And so it could not find any waveforms for cat code 1. And unfortunately, right now, there's a bug in the PTB such that if any participant does not have waveforms for any cat code, base averages will crash. So basically what I did is I removed the group specification and I got rid of the second cat code. Because really all I need is, there's one type of trigger and I'm just going to epic around that. So I did that, and then base averages, I started it here again. Base averages ran just fine. So as you can see here, it started 201 and then it went just fine, and it went on to, well, I stopped it for a second. But yeah, it went to 201, then it went to 202, and everything worked fine. So it went all the way through and printed out the necessary 6 plots. You'll get these 6 plots from a base averages. One with the grand average ERP, one with the grand average distribution across the scalp, the average across the whole epic, that average displayed across the scalp, and then 4 basically empty plots. And that actually means that it worked. So I'll go on. So that was step 9. I ran base averages. And so it did error. And so I troubleshooted and then did it again. So step 10 is to double check to make sure all the data files made it through. And to do that is to go into the data cache folder and open up the log file for that base averages. So I'm in the scripts folder right now. If I go up a level to the main folder and go into data cache is where all the intermediate data files are stored. And whenever a script is run, it also creates a log file, a .log file. So this is where all the averages for each participant, for each cat code, for each electrode are stored in a mat file. But in this log file, this is basically everything that shows up in the MATLAB command window after I ran the script. And so what I can do is I'm going to search for the word warning, because if any participant did not make it through base averages, it will show a warning. So I can just go to this, Control F, and I'm going to search for warning. Aha, and see right away it finds one. So participant 404, it says does not exist. So that's a problem. I'm going to first see if there's any other. Yep. So participant 421 had insufficient trials. So remember, my subsampling length was 7. There apparently was not enough. And again, participant 429, insufficient trials. Okay, so 404. So this file apparently does not exist. So I'm just going to go and verify all of these. So I will go to my data main folder. And first I'm going to check to see if 404 exists. So as you can see, when I filter for 404, there is no REST response. So there legitimately is no file with that name. So I'm going to go back to scripts. And I'm going to open up the load subnames file. And basically what I need to do is I need to comment out 404. Because there is no 404. File not found. And so when I comment a subject out in the subnames file, I'll try to put a note as to why that happened. I'm going to keep this open. Now you will notice that I'm tiling. I'm sort of staggering each of these windows. And so it allows me to easily click to each one. Just a little hint. That's why I arrange the windows the way I do. Okay. Anyways, so 404 didn't work. 421 had insufficient trials. So it found the file, but it didn't have enough trials. So what I'm going to do, because I know that I did pre-process this with my pre-processing pipeline, I'm going to go to data main, and I'm going to open up the report for the REST response pre-processing. That creates a report over here, a report variable. And in this report variable, this basically tells me how the pre-processing went. I can look for how many final epochs there were after all the cleaning was done. So I can scroll down. So I see 404. It looks like it did find a file, but it didn't work. Oh, something happened with the epoching. I can look into that further later. But now I'm looking at a 421. So it looks like it started out with 9 epochs, and it removed 3 from cleaning, so it only had 6. And because the subsampling length was 7, this subject file did not make it through. And then the other one was 429. So same thing. It started out with 30 epochs. It ended up with only 3 epochs. So at this point, I have a choice. Either I could lower the subsample length to include these, at least these 2 subjects. So I would have to lower it to 3. Or I could just remove these subjects. Given that I have 49, well, minus a few others. Well, for this purposes, I think I'm just going to remove these. So 421 and 429. Okay, so I go back to subnames. So 409. Let's say 6 epochs and 420. Epochs. Okay, so now I am going to want to rerun base averages, but in order to do that, anytime I rerun a script, I will have to go in. Let's just see if I said that. So if any warnings are detected, fix the data files or comment out their subnames, which I did. Then I need to delete all files in each of these folders: data cache, output data, and output plots. Because if there are files from a particular analysis in these folders, the PTB will load them up instead of recalculating them. So I basically need to go in and erase all these, because if I were to run base averages again, it would see these intermediate files and say, oh, I've already calculated this, I don't need to do it again, but I want it to do it again. So now I can go back and run base averages with those few participants taken out, and so it should be able to get all the way through that script. So in the meantime, while that's running, so I did this, and then I'm rerunning base averages. I'm going to wait for it to finish and then check to see if there's any more warnings. So in the meantime, while that's running, I am going to create a comparisons file. So what a comparisons file is it's a file that specifies the different statistical comparisons I'm going to make between cat codes. Now you can add other limiting factors, which is basically what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to go to scripts, and here there's a standard REST response comparisons file. Now again, this was from the go-no-go. So I am going to rename this, because I'm doing response comparisons as the label. And the comparison I'm going to do is the meditation group compared to the control group. So meditation, control, as you can see, there's labels. So this is comparison 1. All these lines of code go with this one particular comparison. And then here I have the two variables, variable 1 and variable 2. And I have each one's label and then the variable that actually specifies it. So these are both going to be cat code 1, but now this is where I need to add the, oops, and erp.stim.group equals 1. So now this is going to compare, oops. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, I think this is group 1 and this is group 2. And I need to change, this is no longer a within, but a between subjects. And there's a script which specifies all the different types of comparisons you can do, whether it be Wilcoxon, t-tests, ANOVA, regression, correlation, etc. But we typically use Wilcoxon for within between tests. So this is just going to compare cat code 1 between group 1 and group 2. And the reason I made this comparison file is that all the other scripts that I run are going to use this. So if I go back here, so I've created my comparison file. Now I'm going to open up a regular script, a regular run script. What I'm choosing here is the average amplitude unfiltered time domain windowed script, your typical ERP script, and I'm going to run that with this new comparison to basically compare the ERP between group 1 and group 2. Alright, so this base averages ran correctly. Now again, I'm going to go back up. I'm going to rinse and repeat, so I'm going to go and see if there's any warnings in the data file, the data cache log file. Gonna find. Oh, I took out 421 instead of 429. Nice. Okay. Let me verify. So 421 needed to be out 429. What did I take out before? I'm just going to delete these files because I know I'm going to have to rerun it. I'll load data here, or load subnames. So what did I take out? 409? Is that? Huh. 409, 421, and 429. Somehow I missed one. What does 429 has 3 epochs? What does 421 have? 6 epochs. And 409 has 4 epochs. Apparently I got a little mixed up there. Alright, so I've erased the files in data cache and output data. You don't actually have to erase the files in output plots, it'll just write over them. Okay, so while that's running, I can talk about all the other scripts. So every other script is going to come in a set of at least two to 4 scripts. So for example here, the average amplitude scripts, there are 3 different run scripts and 1 dataset def script that goes along with the average amplitude unfilled analysis. So the dataset def script, all 3 of these, the PCA-TFD, the WIN, and the WIN-TFD, all 3 of these will call this same dataset def script. So if you open up any of these, you'll see it has specified here the average amplitude unfilled dataset def. So the dataset def just specifies a few parameters like the name of all the output files, how to load the data. So this is the base averages file that's being created right now. And then if there's a post-proc script, and then which electrode to plot. So I have plotting CPZ. Okay, so window is just going to do a time domain basic ERP comparison. WinTFD would be a time frequency domain, but also windowed. And then the PCA-TFD would do time frequency, but with principal components analysis. But again, we're going to do the windowed time domain approach because this is the most simple. So the thing that needs to happen when I do this is I need to alter the component windows, and then I need to ensure my comparison file is listed in comparisons. So here these are the component windows, and it's specifying here the component name and then the baseline in the time domain, and then the start and stop time of the time window. So this is the N1, and I'm going from time bin 9 to time bin 19, and I'm going to look for the min value, and I'm going to compare that according to the comparison file, and then P2, yada yada, N2, P3, and then WW we call the whole window, so that's from 0 to 128. Now if you look down here, this is the actual function which runs the unfiltered windowed analysis. And this number here, which I have a comment down here, this is actually the sampling rate. And the reason that's important is that these time windows are going to be in this many units. So this many units per second. So when I say from 9 to 19 bins, I would basically have to divide these by 128, and that would tell me how much of a second. And so I've already converted these basically, so to be relatively standard windows. Okay, so, but this has listed my response comparison file, which I altered, and I'm just going to keep these relatively standard, oh geez, I'm going to keep these relatively standard windows. So I'm actually not going to alter anything. And I see this script has run completely. So again, I'm going to go and check the log file to double check and make sure everybody made it through. All right, so it's not finding warning, which means everything went through. Now the reason why I check this, because sometimes if a subject doesn't have enough epochs, the script will complete, it won't error out, but then later scripts might error out. And so I make sure that the base averages runs perfectly well. Okay, so now I have run base averages until there are no warnings detected. I created my comparison file, step 11. Step 12, I've modified my average amplitude unfilled win script so that it has appropriate windows and my comparison list. And now I run the unfiltered win script. And the reason I do this is that A, this is the simplest analysis that you can do, and B, it's basically a test run. So it's going to tell me, is my comparison file working? And as we can see here, no. My comparison file is not working. So this error, matrix dimensions must agree, in the subplot. Typically what happens when, so what happened is this created, oh geez, it created the first three plots, what we call the basic plot, so the grand average, averaging all trials. And it did that successfully, which is basically the same as base averages. But then once it tried to compare with my comparison file, it failed. And so I know that something in my comparison file is incorrect. So I need to troubleshoot what that is. And I've done this enough times that I think I know what's wrong. I think that these are actually supposed to be zeros and ones. So if let me just, I'm going to go back to data main, and I'm going to open up one of the files. REST response. So 201, that is the control group. So I should look in erp.stim, which is where our added variables are. I see a group variable, which is good. That's what I'm calling. Haha, group equals 0. So I just misspecified the groups. So control is group 0, and meditation is group 1. Okay. So we run it again. We cross our fingers. Again, it's generating the basic plots, which I would expect it to. And here, it has successfully generated difference plots. So these are all difference plots. This is just the average difference at CPZ. Here's the average within that window. And again, you read these across the row. So this is the N1 window. So if you take the average difference between red and blue line, and then plot it across electrodes, that's what you get here. And then what is the p-value of that difference is represented here. But basically, it worked. If you have these plots, that means it works. So it produced 6 MATLAB plots with all stuff in them. And that basically means I can now go ahead and run almost any other script. I can run all average amplitude, evoked power. I can run ISFA amplitude, total power, and I can run ISFA ITPS, so intertrial phase synchrony. I can run those scripts, any one of them, as long as they have this comparison file listed and they have appropriate windows. So for example, with the WinTFD, I would just want to make sure that this has appropriate time windows and frequency windows. This has several different frequencies in one, so I'm not going to run that, but basically now you're ready to go ahead and run anything else you want. If you want to run ICPS, there's a couple of the things that need to happen. Most importantly is a CSD file needs to be created for the Laplacian to be applied. And I can cover that in another video. But basically, as long as this unfilled win runs successfully, you're free to just go ahead and run most other things. All right, enjoy.